In that 911 call, he mentioned the Boston Marathon bombers Tamerlan and Dzhokhar Tsarnaev as his homeboys. Welcome to the True Crime Never Sleeps podcast. I'm your host, Larry Leese. This is the podcast where I share true crime stories for your entertainment, but you might lose some sleep after listening to these stories. After reading about true crime stories, I condense all the content and bring valuable information to you. To stay up to date with all of our content, check us out on Twitter at TrueCrimeNS and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up if you like our video. And then we'd like to thank our sponsor, Poddex, for sponsoring this episode. What is Poddex, you ask? That is a great question. Poddex are the hottest new tool for podcasters looking to have more meaningful conversations or gamify their podcast. All you do is shuffle up, ask a question, and let the content roll. Get yours today at poddex.com. Use the code Larry21 for 10% off your order. And if you stick around to the end of the episode, you'll be able to see Poddex in action with our Poddex segment. And now we'd like to dive right into our topic for the week, the Orlando Pulse Club attack. On June 11th, 2016, Pulse, a gay nightclub in Orlando, Florida, was hosting Latin Night, a weekly Saturday night event drawing a primarily Latino crowd. About 320 people were still inside the club, which was serving last call drinks at around 2 a.m. on June 12th. At around the same time, Omar Mateen aimed at the club via rental van, parking it in the parking lot of a neighboring car shop. He got out and walked towards the building, armed with a Sig Sauer MCX semi-automatic rifle and a 9mm Glock 17 semi-automatic pistol. He was wearing a green, blue, and white plaid dress shirt, a white t-shirt underneath, and tan cargo pants. At 2:02 a.m., Mateen bypassed Officer Adam Gruler, a uniformed off-duty Orlando Police Department officer working extra duty as a security guard, entered the building through its southern entrance, and began shooting patrons. Dozens were killed or severely injured inside the crowded nightclub, either directly or by ricochets. Gruler took cover and called in a signal for assistance. He told a post-incident Police Foundation assessment team that he had immediately recognized that his handgun would be no match for Mateen's rifle. When he witnessed Mateen shooting two patrons attempting to escape through an emergency exit, Gruler fired shots at him. In response, Mateen withdrew back into the nightclub and continued shooting victims as he traversed through the building, sometimes firing into bodies without checking whether they were already dead. When additional officers arrived at the nightclub, beginning at 2:04 a.m., Gruler shouted, "The gunman's in the patio," and resumed firing at Mateen a minute later. Two officers joined Gruler in engaging Mateen, who then retreated farther into the nightclub and began a hostage situation in one of the bathrooms. In less than 5 minutes, Mateen had fired approximately 200 rounds, pausing only to reload. During the shooting, some of the people trapped inside the club sought help by calling or sending text messages to friends and relatives. Initially, some of them thought the gunshots were firecrackers or part of the music. A recently discharged Marine Corps veteran working as a nightclub bouncer immediately recognized the sounds as gunfire, which he described as high caliber, and jumped over a locked door behind which dozens of people were hidden and paralyzed by fear. Then opened a latch door behind them, allowing approximately 70 people to escape. Many described a scene of panic and confusion caused by the loud music and darkness. One person shielded herself by hiding inside a bathroom and covering herself with bodies. A bartender said she took cover beneath the glass bar. At least one patron tried to help those who were hit. According to a man trapped inside a bathroom with 15 other patrons, Mateen fired 16 times into the bathroom through the closed door, killing at least 2 and wounding several others. According to one of the hostages, Mateen entered a bathroom in the nightclub's northwest side and opened fire on the people hiding there, wounding several. The hostage, who had taken cover inside a stall with others, was injured by 2 bullets and struck with flying pieces of a wall hit by stray bullets. Shortly after entering the women's restroom, Mateen's rifle jammed. He then discarded the rifle and switched to his Glock pistol. 2 survivors quoted Mateen as saying, quote, "I don't have a problem with black people," and that he wouldn't stop his assault until America stopped bombing his country. Other survivors heard Mateen claim he had explosives, as well as snipers stationed around the club. Patrons trapped inside called or texted 911 to warn of the possible presence of explosives. In the next 45 minutes, about 100 officers from the OPD and the Orange County Sheriff's Office were dispatched to the scene. Among the earliest first responders to arrive were a firefighter crew from Fire Station 5 and 2 supporting firefighter paramedics from Fire Station 7. 80 fire and emergency medical service personnel from the Orlando Fire Department were deployed during the entire incident. At 2:09 a.m., several minutes after the gunfire began, the club posted on its Facebook page, quote, "Everyone gets out of the pulse and keeps running." At 2:22 a.m., Mateen placed a 911 call. In that 911 call, he mentioned the Boston Marathon bombers Tamerlan and Dzhokhar Tsarnaev as his homeboys and made a reference to Moner Mohammed Abu Salah, American citizen who died in a suicide bombing in Syria in 2014. Mateen said he was inspired by Abu Salah's death for the Al-Nusra Front targeting Syrian government troops and swore allegiance to ISIS leader al-Baghdadi. The FBI said that Mateen and Abu Salah had attended the same mosque and knew each other casually. Mateen made 2 other 911 calls during the shooting. Numerous 911 calls were made by the patrons inside the nightclub around this time. After the initial rounds of gunfire between Mateen and Gruler, 6 officers shot out a large glass window and followed the sound of shooting to the bathroom area. When Mateen struck his head out from one of the bathrooms, at least 2 officers shot at him. After the gunfire stopped, they were ordered to hold positions instead of storming the bathroom. After about 15 to 20 minutes, SWAT arrived and had the officers withdraw, as the officers were, quote, "not really in tactical gear." SWAT then took over the operation. When asked why the officers didn't proceed to the bathroom and engage Mateen, Orlando Police Chief John Mina said it was because Mateen, quote, "went from an active shooter to a barricaded gunman and had hostages." He also noted, quote, "if he had continued shooting, our officers would have gone in there." At that time, the last shot by Mateen was fired between 2:10 a.m. and 2:18 a.m. Rescues of people trapped inside the nightclub commenced and continued throughout the night. Because so many people were lying on the dance floor, one rescuing officer demanded, quote, "if you're alive, raise your hand." By 2:35 a.m., police had managed to extract nearly all the injured from the nightclub. Those who remained included the hostages held by Mateen in the bathroom, as well as a dozen people who were hiding inside dressing rooms. The FBI reported that no shots were heard between the time Mateen stopped exchanging gunfire with the first responders and 5:02 a.m. when Orlando police began breaching the building's wall. Just before the breach, Mateen entered a woman's bathroom where the hostages were hiding, and opened fire, killing a man who sacrificed his life to save the woman behind him and at least one other. At 5:07 a.m., 14 SWAT officers, after failing to blow open a big enough hole in the bathroom's exterior wall using a bomb due to the wall's structure, successfully breached the building when a policeman drove a Bearcat armored vehicle through a wall in the northern bathroom. They then used 2 flashbangs to distract Mateen and shoot at him. The breach drew Mateen out into the hallway, and at 5:14 a.m., he engaged the officers. He was shot 8 times and killed in the resulting shootout, which involved at least 11 officers who fired about 150 bullets. He was reported as, quote, "down" at 5:17 a.m. At 5:05 a.m., the police said a bomb squad had set off a controlled explosion. At 5:53 a.m., the Orlando police posted on Twitter, quote, "Pulse shooting. The shooter inside the club is dead." 30 hostages were freed during the police operation. The survivors were searched by police for guns and explosives. 50 people died in the incident, including Mateen, and another 58 were injured. 53 by gunfire and 5 by other causes. Some survivors were critically injured. 39, including Mateen, was pronounced dead at the scene, and 11 at local hospitals. 38 victims to die at the scene, 20 died on the stage area and dance floor, 9 in the nightclub's northern bathroom, 4 in the southern bathroom, 3 on the stage, 1 in the front lobby, and 1 out on a patio. At least 5 of the dead were not killed during the initial volley of gunfire, but during the hostage situation in the bathroom. Pulse was hosting Latin Night. Over 90% of the victims were of Hispanic background, and half of those were of Puerto Rican descent. 4 Dominicans and 3 Mexican citizens were also among the dead. An off-duty U.S. Army Reserve captain at the club, who was not in uniform, was also killed. This attack is the second deadliest mass shooting by a single shooter in U.S. history, behind the 2017 Las Vegas shooting, which we'll cover next week. Prior to the Las Vegas shooting, the Pulse shooting had been the deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history. It's also the deadliest incident of violence against the LGBT people in the history of the United States, surpassing the 1973 upstairs lounge arson attack and the deadliest terrorist attack in the U.S. since the 9/11 attacks in 2001. Autopsies of the 49 dead were completed by the Orange County Medical Examiner's Office by June 14th. Results were released in early August. According to the autopsy reports, many of the victims were shot multiple times in the front or side and from a short distance. More than a third were shot in the head, and most had multiple bullet wounds and were likely shot more than 3 feet away. In total, there were over 200 gunshot wounds. Many of the injured underwent surgery. Most of the 44 people were taken to the Orlando Regional Medical Center, the primary regional trauma center 3 blocks away. 12 others went to the Florida Hospital Orlando. 9 of ORMC's patients died there, and by June 14th, 27 remained hospitalized, with 6 in critical condition. ORMC performed surgeries on 76 patients. The last of the injured were discharged for ORMC on September 6, 3 months after the shooting. 3 Colombians and 2 Canadians were among the injured. Additionally, a responding SWAT officer received a minor head injury when a bullet hit his Kevlar helmet. Let us know your thoughts and comments on the Orlando Pulse Club attack. Do you remember the coverage of it? Were you in the area? Or just give us your general thoughts on the incident. And now on to our pod deck segment. Today's question is, what is one case that you remember following on TV or in the media? That's a tough one. I'm going to go with Scott and Lacey Peterson, that, Chris Watts. Those 2 I remember the most. Scott Peterson, I say I can remember the most vividly. I just remember like the full-on mass media coverage of it, because he murdered his pregnant wife and had an affair. Well, let us know in the comments section below what's one case that you remember following on TV or in the media. As always, thank you so much for listening and watching, and we'll see you next time.